You might have noticed a new voice this week. I'm Al, and I am going to be asking Christina a couple of questions to better understand what is happening in America. I have not been following what's been happening in America too closely, mainly because my New Year's resolution was to be less sad and depressed, and those two don't go together amazingly well. But Christina is going to explain, hopefully, both what is happening and why, unfortunately, for my resolutions at least, I should probably be giving more of a thought to it. A lot has been happening this week in America, particularly in regards to Venezuela. Christina, what is the background to what has been happening? And could you just put a bit more context in what is currently going on?
Yeah, so Venezuela is actually quite interesting. It's kind of become the perfect foil for Trump as a kind of a rogue socialist state. And he uses it in that way, and he can then kind of talk about it as socialism gone wrong. He can target the Democrats by calling them socialists and linking them with Venezuela, and he can also mobilize the kind of anti-socialist Latino voter base in the US. So it's quite a useful foil for him that way. It's also an oil rival to the US, so that also adds an incentive to destabilize the regime. And it's an easy target because it doesn't really have any strong allies. And it is true that there are Venezuelan gangs operating inside the US, although it's not clear that they're kind of the big issue that Trump has made them out to be. So he has been targeting Venezuela pretty consistently since he took office again in January. So he's put tariffs on countries that buy Venezuelan oil. He's been targeting Venezuelan citizens in the US. He's removed protected status from them. He's trying to deport them. And it's leading to a lot of kind of immigration actions against Venezuelans. And he has, over the summer, he started deploying his war fleet down to the waters, the international waters outside Venezuela, and basically is blowing up boats.
America's history with Venezuela has not been particularly rosy, even under previous administrations. You mentioned the deployment of military warships. What specifically has been happening in these last couple of weeks to cause such an escalation?
Basically, since the summer, the US has now carried out 20 strikes and killed over 80 people. He has also recently, in the last few weeks, designated various gangs, including Maduro, who's the president, as kind of a head of a gang, who are international terrorists. And that basically is done to provide him more legal cover. And he's reportedly authorized the CIA to now operate covertly inside Venezuela, although I'm not sure how covert it is, if everyone knows that you're doing that. But anyway, he has done that. And people kind of are saying that this is a way of kind of laying the groundwork for a much bigger military operation against Venezuela, which is making everyone nervous. And he's also, just this weekend, the reports have come out that the FBI basically are interviewing people to kind of push this claim that Venezuela was working with the Democrats to steal the 2020 election, which we know is nonsense because the election wasn't stolen, but that's also kind of a new conspiracy theory that's being kind of thrown in Venezuela.
For the average American citizen, why should they be concerned? Why should they care so much about this?
So I think everyone should care because it's undermining this core principle of democratic societies, which is due process under the law. That you have a right to know what you're accused with and you have a right to defend yourself. And that's been taken away. It's been taken away for the people who were subject to the kind of deportations. And now internationally, effectively what the Trump administration is doing is saying they have a right to determine who is breaking the law, so these so-called narco-terrorists, and then to judge it and to provide sentence, which, as far as they're concerned, means just killing them. It is, as a UN body has said, like extrajudicial killing. And if you're in a situation where the administration feels that it can kill people on the president's say so and not provide evidence and not go via a legal process, then I think that's very concerning. And then in terms of the kind of election denial stuff, where I think that's worrying is everything the administration does to continually continually make people doubt what happened in 2020 is a way of laying the groundwork for them to deny what happens in the next election. right? So what you're doing is you're undermining the chance of having a free and fair election, because you're just slowing down electoral processes and you're providing an opportunity for you to say, look, it's happened before, it's happened again.
What pushback has there been internally within the US Senate and House to these actions?
And well, one thing actually within the military that happened is that a senior military lawyer called a JAG resigned, or said he announced his resignation, and reporting is that that's because he considered the attacks to be illegal and was overruled. So that's something that's happening internally. Within Congress, so last week, 6 Democratic congressmen, congresspeople, I should say, and senators kind of released this video. They were all ex-veterans, they'd all served in the military, and they basically released this video just saying, hey, people in the military, remember your oath is to the Constitution, and you have a duty to disobey illegal orders, which you could read as being targeted towards the current situation in Venezuela, but also potentially to future troop deployments within the US. But that was the video. And then really it kind of set the Republicans off a bit, particularly Trump. So then Trump spent kind of Friday and Saturday attacking them on social media, on his Truth Social site. He called them traitors, he called them seditious, he said they deserve the death penalty, they should be in jail, and so on. And actually, since then, 5 out of those 6 Democrats have said they've received death threats on the back of that. You know, what I find really odd about it is not just that Trump was triggered, but there was a really easy response, right? He could just have said, I totally support this video. The military shouldn't shouldn't obey illegal orders, but that's okay because I don't issue any, right? I mean, that's the obvious thing to say, is that all my orders are illegal. But anyway, so that's the current situation, is that those Democrats are all being targeted. And actually, as of today, a brand new action is that the military is now has said it's opened an investigation into one of them for supposed misconduct, and that's Senator Mark Kelly, which is, again, yes, another way of trying to use the state to target their enemies.
Surprisingly, the Democrats are not the only people who Trump has been attacking recently, including Marjorie Taylor Greene, a famed, up until relatively recently, Trump ally and supporter. What has caused her to fall out of Trump's good graces?
So Marjorie Taylor Greene is a Republican congresswoman who, as you say, has been one of Trump's biggest allies. She fell out with him because of Epstein, because of the Epstein files. She's been calling for their release ever since January, and kind of called out Trump for not doing it. And he then turned on her, threatened to primary her, called her a terrible person, and so on. Now, she announced this weekend that she's going to resign from Congress in January. She did explicitly say that Trump was one of the reasons she was resigning. She said that she's been also on the receiving end of lots of death threats since he kind of turned on her. And it's kind of odd, because some people are celebrating and saying, oh, well, it's a good thing. It's a sign that that the Trump MAGA project is kind of falling apart. You know, she is one of the faces of MAGA, but I don't think it's a good thing. I don't think it is good for a president to succeed in driving out his political enemies. I think that's a bad thing. I think it means that you're continuing to replace politicians with people who are more loyal, and you will end up with just a kind of fanatically loyal cadre of Republican congresspeople and senators who effectively then sign away their co-equal status under the Constitution. And the other thing is that this kind of attacks both on Marjorie Taylor Greene and then previously, you know, on Democrats. It basically suppresses dissent because it silences others from speaking out. Because people don't want to be forced to resign. They don't want to lose their jobs and their income and their livelihoods, and they don't want to be threatened by people, you know, with bombs or death or whatever else. So I think it is really concerning. And the fact is that even if Trump goes tomorrow, the project hasn't ended. It's consolidating. its power the whole time and its levers on power. And so I think we need to worry as much about what follows Trump as Trump himself.
Absolutely. One of the longest shadows that Trump will have cast is the appointment of so many people into just all over American society. Most recently, RFK, who's the health secretary, continues to push rather, I think the legal word is questionable, views on autism and its potential causes. Why has RFK has had these views for a very long time? Why does his pushing of them now and pushing them to the CDC make so much more of a difference?
So RFK has been kind of skeptical of vaccines for a long time, and ever since he kind of took office as Secretary of Health, which was in the spring, he has really quite systematically undermined vaccines and vaccine confidence and vaccine availability in the US and replaced panels and all the rest of it. I'm not going to go into that now, but what happened this weekend is that the CDC, so the Centers for Disease Control, which is kind of the gold standard source of health information in the US, published a footnote on its website. So during his confirmation hearings, he promised Senator Cassidy, who's a Republican senator and also medically trained, that he would not change the CDC position that vaccines do not cause autism. And that is the overwhelming scientific consensus that vaccines and autism are not linked. There is huge amounts of evidence for this. So what he did is that statement still stands, and he put a little asterisk and put a footnote, and basically he's changed the CDC website to say that there could be a link. And he's further drawing, basically creating doubt. And why this is so dangerous is because, if you can't trust .gov, then who do you trust? And effectively, you're now in a situation where for decades, those were the gold standard sources of information, and now they're not. And it's an incredibly powerful pulpit, because then what you're doing is you're forcing accurate scientific information to be fragmented across different groups, different people. And it's not clear to people who don't know that space who to trust and who to believe. And so what you're doing is you're really undermining vaccine confidence, muddying the waters, and that will have the effect of driving down uptake of vaccines. And it's really sad, and children will die because of it. I mean, that sounds exaggerated, but it's not exaggerated. There's no evidence that vaccine causes autism, but loads of evidence for, say, measles causing illness and death. So I just want to tell people this, right? So the measles vaccine was introduced in the US in the 1960s. Before that, there were 3 million cases of measles in children every single year. And almost 50,000 of those children went to hospital, and about 500 of them died every single year. Right? In the 3 years since the measles vaccine was introduced in the 1960s, cases fell by 95%. Right? In 2000, there was no measles in the US. None. It was eliminated. It's one of the biggest success stories of the modern era. Right? And it's since returned because vaccine uptake has been falling because of the conspiracy theories pushed by people like RFK Jr. So this year in the US, it's been one of the worst years in years, and there were 1,700 cases, 200 children hospitalized, and 3 children have died. More children will die the more people do not trust those vaccines, and those vaccines have saved millions and millions of lives.
That's horrible and grim. From one 3-letter agency to another, the NIH has recently had some changes to its grant application and funding process. As someone who has mercifully never had to write a grant application, why does this matter so much to both the NIH and just science generally?
Right, so the NIH is the National Institutes of Health, and it's one of the main research funders for health-related research in the US. We've got an equivalent in the UK. And essentially, it will be funding loads of incredible scientific research, including like the vaccines of tomorrow, treatments of tomorrow, ways of improving health services for everybody. It's just how innovation happens. And, as someone who does get lots of grants, basically what happens is that once you've been awarded a grant, you sign a contract, and typically then that you've got that funding for 3 years, 4 years. It may fund a PhD student, it may fund some research assistants, it will fund travel and conferences and so on. It basically gives you the money to do the research that you said you were going to do, and someone's decided, generally a peer review panel has decided it's worth doing. And what NIH did this weekend is they have changed one of the clauses in their standard contract. So it's in the small print. Who cares about small print? But what it says is that effectively the administration can now terminate a grant mid-progress at any point if the agency determines that the award no longer effectuates the program goals or agency priorities. So that means, say you've got a grant that's looking at, malaria vaccines, and they decide, we don't care about malaria anymore, or we don't like vaccines, they can just stop you, right? It means that your research stops. It means any staff you have employed on that grant are fired. It means that science doesn't get out. And it's particularly unethical if you're actually running a trial or doing anything with patients, because effectively that treatment will have to stop and you have potentially done harm to people without being able to measure it or understand it or complete their treatment. I mean, it's a really terrible thing to be able to do, and it also opens the possibility that they could terminate grants if, for instance, they're not giving the results that they want. So it's just a way of really destabilizing the future of research, and as a scientist you just don't know then, am I going to be able to finish this grant? If you're a PhD student, you're a young researcher, you're going to be like, well, how do I know that my job's still going to be there in a year or 2 years or 3 years? And so what it means is that scientists can't be secure in their lives or careers, especially early career scientists, and the incentives will be to move. So either move physically, like go to a different country and take kind of knowledge and expertise out of the US, or it will be to move field. I'm not going to go into vaccines, I'm not going to go into infectious diseases, or I'm not going to go into science, I'm going to go into industry or something. And what it means is that you are hollowing out this generation of scientists and this generation of scientific innovation, and that will take years to recover from.
Yeah, that's incredibly concerning that there's going to be such a long run effect on science and research, and more concerningly that this is a story that has both such impact and I had absolutely no idea was even a thing. It's entirely sailed underneath my Twitter and my news reading.
I mean, the thing is, it's kind of a hard thing to get around. I mean, it is literally the small print in a contract that just has massive impact. And there are loads of stories like that all the time that won't necessarily make the front page of the New York Times, but still having a really negative impact on the US's democracy. And that's why I do the tracker. And so that's kind of trumpactiontracker.info, and it's just somewhere where you can just see what's happened in the last few days and just keep up to date with it, even if you don't necessarily have to then go and do loads of stuff on the back of it, but it's just a way of knowing that these things are happening in the background.
No, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for just explaining just how bad things are. But yeah, it's weird. The sky hasn't fallen just yet. Like, my world continues to turn. So maybe actually knowing about this might not be the worst thing in the world.
No. And if you're American, you need to vote in the midterms. That's basically it. For the next year, that's what you got to do.
Get out to vote.